In 2018, DNA evidence finally identified the Golden State Killer after 40 years. But here's what keeps detectives awake at night: for every killer they catch, there are dozens still out there. The FBI estimates there are between 25 and 50 active serial killers in the United States right now. And some of the most terrifying ones were never identified. That's number 3 on this list. But first, let me show you someone even worse. These aren't fictional monsters from movies. These are real people who committed horrific crimes, taunted police, and then vanished. Some are likely still alive today. These are the serial killers who got away with murder. Starting at number 10, between 1974 and 1975, someone was targeting gay men in San Francisco. The killer would sketch their victims before murdering them, earning the name, the Doodler. At least 14 men were stabbed to death. 3 survived the attacks and gave descriptions of the killer. A young black man in his early 20s who was well-dressed and claimed to be an art student. He would approach men at gay bars and nightclubs, offer to draw their portrait, and then lure them to secluded areas. Here's why this case is particularly frustrating: investigators believe they know who the Doodler is. They had a suspect. But several witnesses refused to testify because they didn't want to publicly reveal they were gay. This was 1975, and the stigma was overwhelming. The suspect was never charged. Police believe he may have continued killing in other cities. The case remains open, and in 2019, San Francisco police released a new sketch hoping someone would come forward. No arrests have been made. The original Night Stalker/Golden State Killer, wait, he was caught. Number 9 is a bit different. Joseph DeAngelo, the Golden State Killer, was finally arrested in 2018 through familial DNA matching. But here's why he's on this list. He committed at least 13 murders, 50 rapes, and 120 burglaries between 1974 and 1986, and then he just stopped. For 32 years, he lived a normal life. He was a police officer during many of his crimes. He had a family. Neighbors described him as a regular guy who worked on his motorcycle in his garage. The terrifying part isn't that he was caught, it's that he stopped killing and successfully blended into society for 3 decades. How many others have done the same? How many cases considered cold are actually killers who simply retired? The Golden State Killer is a reminder that some of the people on this list might be living normal lives right now, their dark past buried and unknown. Number 8, between 1968 and 1969, someone murdered at least 5 people in Northern California and claimed to have killed 37. He sent taunting letters to newspapers with cryptographic ciphers. He called himself the Zodiac. The Zodiac killed couples in isolated areas, usually with a gun. He wore a distinctive costume with a cross-circle symbol. He wrote letters describing the crimes in detail, sometimes including pieces of the victim's clothing as proof. 4 of his ciphers have been solved, the most recent in 2020, when amateur codebreakers cracked a 51-year-old message. It read, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner." The last confirmed Zodiac letter was received in 1974. Hundreds of suspects have been investigated. DNA evidence exists, but hasn't led to an identification. Some researchers believe they've identified him through genealogical databases, but law enforcement hasn't confirmed any match. The case remains one of the most famous unsolved serial murder investigations in American history. Number 7. In 2010, police searching for a missing woman discovered 10 sets of human remains along a beach highway on Long Island, New York. All were women, most were sex workers, and they'd been killed over a span of at least 15 years. The killer is meticulous. Bodies were wrapped in burlap and spaced evenly along the highway. He would call the victims' families from the victims' phones to taunt them, but kept calls under 3 minutes to avoid being traced. One victim's sister received multiple calls from the killer. He knew details about the murder that hadn't been made public. Phone records showed the calls came from crowded areas in Manhattan, busy enough that he couldn't be spotted. Despite having DNA evidence, numerous witness descriptions, and phone records, police have never made an arrest. In 2023, they arrested Rex Heuermann for some of the murders based on DNA evidence, but investigators believe there may be multiple killers operating in the area. The original Long Island serial killer may still be at large. Number 6. In the late 1960s, 3 young women were murdered in Glasgow, Scotland, after nights out at the Barrowland Ballroom. All were strangled, all were menstruating, and witnesses reported seeing each victim with the same man. He was described as tall, well-dressed, with reddish-brown hair. Multiple witnesses said he quoted extensively from the Bible during conversations, leading to his nickname. He expressed strong views about adultery and sin, particularly regarding menstruation. The third victim's sister spent the evening with her and the suspect. She provided a detailed description that police used to create a composite sketch. It remains one of the most famous unidentified suspect images in British crime history. Despite one of the largest police investigations in Scottish history, Bible John was never identified. Some investigators believe he may have been a merchant seaman who left Scotland after the murders. Others think he continued killing elsewhere under a different pattern. DNA evidence collected from one victim's clothing has been preserved, but with no suspect to compare it to, the case remains unsolved. Number 5. Between 1971 and 1972, someone abducted and murdered 6 young black girls in Washington, D.C. Their bodies were dumped along freeways, all within a 5-month period. The victims ranged from 10 to 18 years old. They were abducted in broad daylight from busy streets. Several were kept alive for days before being killed and dumped in plain sight. One victim was forced to write a note to the police before she was killed. It read, "This is tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit the others when you catch me if you can." The Freeway phantom had knowledge of police procedures and may have been someone familiar with law enforcement. Some victims showed signs of being held in a comfortable environment, fed, bathed, and not immediately harmed. Then they were strangled and discarded. The killing stopped abruptly in 1972. No credible suspect was ever identified. Some investigators believe he may have died, been imprisoned for another crime, or moved to a different area. The case received far less media attention than similar crimes involving white victims, something many believe contributed to it remaining unsolved. Number 4. In 1884 to 1885, someone terrorized Austin, Texas, murdering at least 8 women. This was before Jack the Ripper, making this one of the earliest documented serial killer cases in America. The killer broke into homes at night, attacked women with an axe, and sometimes dragged them outside before killing them. He targeted servant girls initially, then began killing women from wealthy families. The brutality escalated with each murder. Hundreds of suspects were investigated. The city was in panic. People formed armed patrols and slept with weapons. Then, after the 8th murder in December 1885, the killings stopped. Some historians believe the killer moved to London and became Jack the Ripper. The timelines align, and the methods share similarities. Others think he died or was imprisoned under a different name. The case was never solved, and in the 1880s, criminal investigation techniques were primitive. No forensic evidence was properly preserved. The servant girl Annihilator's identity died with him. Number 3. Before we knew about the Golden State Killer, there were multiple unsolved serial killer cases in California that investigators eventually linked to one person. But here's the disturbing reality: for every Joseph DeAngelo they eventually catch, there are cases where the killer is never identified. Jack the Ripper is the most famous, but here's what keeps modern FBI profilers awake. Advances in DNA technology have revealed that many isolated murders were actually serial killers. Cases originally thought to be unrelated turned out to be the work of one person who killed across multiple jurisdictions. The FBI's Highway Serial Killings Initiative has connected over 850 murder victims to long-haul truck drivers, and they've only scratched the surface. Most of those cases remain unsolved. The terrifying truth. There are likely hundreds of unidentified serial killers whose crimes were never linked because they moved frequently, chose transient victims, or operated before modern forensic technology existed. Number 2. From May 1918 to October 1919, someone broke into homes in New Orleans and attacked sleeping residents with axes or straight razors. At least 6 people were killed, and 6 more were injured. The Axeman didn't fit any pattern. He attacked people of different ages, races, and socio-economic backgrounds. He broke into homes by chiseling through doors, used the residents' own axes, and left no clear motive. In March 1919, a letter allegedly from the killer was published in newspapers. It read, "I am very fond of jazz music. I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing." On the night he specified, every dance hall in New Orleans was packed, and many people hired musicians to play in their homes. No murders occurred that night. The killings stopped in October 1919. No one was ever arrested. Some believe the Axeman was a demon or supernatural entity, a belief the killer encouraged in his letter. More likely, he was someone who died, moved away, or was institutionalized for other reasons. The case remains unsolved, and the Axeman's identity is unknown. Number 1. In 1888, someone murdered and mutilated at least 5 women in the Whitechapel district of London. The killer's identity has never been confirmed, despite being the most investigated serial murder case in history. The murders were brutal. The victims were sex workers killed in the street, their bodies mutilated with surgical precision. The killer removed organs in some cases, suggesting anatomical knowledge. Letters were sent to police and newspapers, allegedly from the killer, signed Jack the Ripper. Whether they were genuine or hoaxes remains debated. Over 100 suspects have been proposed over the years: doctors, butchers, royals, artists. DNA analysis in 2019 suggested a Polish barber named Aaron Kosminski, but the findings are disputed. Here's why Jack the Ripper remains number 1. He operated when modern forensic science didn't exist, in a densely populated city, and was never identified despite massive public attention. He represents the ultimate unsolved case. The murders stopped as suddenly as they began. Whether he died, was imprisoned, moved away, or simply stopped killing, we'll never know. Jack the Ripper became the template for how we think about serial killers, and he's a permanent reminder that some people get away with murder. These cases remind us that justice isn't always served, and some mysteries stay buried forever. If you found this disturbing, hit subscribe because next week we're covering the most chilling cold cases that might actually be solved soon. You won't want to miss it.